What's happening out there? This is ODD TV. We're gonna look at vectors and chevrons, but I'm gonna start this by sharing a clip from another video that I made called Cigarettes in the Occult. It's the reason why I'm making this video in the first place. And Newports, they have this weird shape for their logo. It looks like an upside down Nike sign. People say it looks like a ring on Saturn kind of symbolism, like a swoosh around Saturn. I think it kind of looks like a spaceship kind of thing, you know, like one of these. And it's funny because RJ Reynolds has a boomerang looking thing in their logo. Let's look at the Newport logo again. And you see how there's emphasis on the older logo with the shadow underneath it. It looks like it's floating or hovering above it. And we got these Ace cigarettes that have kind of the same logo, only it's sharper. And we got Hollywood cigarettes. See, this one looks just like that, like a little ship hovering, you know. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm looking way too far into this shit. I don't know, but it's still fun, keeps me occupied. Looks like a ship. And it looks like Chevron's logo. I received some feedback basically saying that my line of thinking isn't as crazy as what can actually be. He provided me with a link to a rare documentary called Moon Rising by Jose Escamilla. I watched the whole thing, but here's the part about the chevrons and vectors.
The Vector, NASA's official logo. If you've ever looked at NASA's official logo, both their official insignia and their official seal, you'll see that the most prominent object in the seal is a red swooshing object. They call that the chevron or the vector. If you ask NASA's Public Affairs Office, this symbology is featured so heavily in their insignia and seal, they'll give you what really amounts to the standard facile cover story for the unilluminated. They'll tell you that that is a representation of a hypersonic wing design from the 1950s, which was the time the logo was created. Not exactly the case. Someone might want to ask the Russian Federal Space Agency, Roscosmos, that was formed in 1992, why they chose that same logo. And while you're at it, you can go ask the Chinese, who formed their space agency in 1996, why in the world they're using a hypersonic wing design from the 1950s as their official logo. Then you can ask the Japanese, the South Koreans, Taiwanese, Malaysia, Mexico, Iran, all of these countries, even Bulgaria. They all utilize the vector symbology in their space agency logos for their national space agencies. It gets even deeper. You can go and look at the individual manned program patches for NASA. The Mercury program, for example, a blatant use of covert symbology. In every logo dealing with the Mercury program, you'll see what looks like a number 7 in their logo. And again, NASA's official story is that they put this number 7 there so that they could pay homage to the original 7 Mercury astronauts. Kind of forgetting the fact that only 6 Mercury astronauts actually flew into space because number 7 never did. Deke Slayton had a heart problem, so he didn't get to go up. So there were only 6 Mercury astronauts. Yet there's a 7 in every single logo. That's in the official mission or official program insignia for Mercury, as well as the 6 individual mission patches carry this logo. And it carries on to the Space Shuttle program. If you look at the Apollo logo has a big letter A in it. At least that's what they want you to believe, but it's not. Again, that's just a simple way of explaining away the inclusion of this vector symbology in the logo. If you go to the Space Shuttle program, the original Space Shuttle STS program patch is a triangular patch that, again, hides the use of the chevronic vector symbology. And that also goes for many of the STS-specific mission patches. Every single one of the International Space Station expedition patches carry the vector symbology. The Russian Mir space station used the vector symbology. That was their official logo. And you can even go deeper and look at military-industrial complex companies. Look at the logo on a company like Lockheed Martin, 2 vectors. The X-Prize logo, Ames Research Labs, U.S. Space Command. When you get into the military realm, the United States Space Command, their official logo is the vector symbol. And when you look at the military's individual space-specific programs, all of them deal with vector symbology in their official insignias. And the question really becomes, who or what are these people paying homage to? And the truth, quite frankly, is out of this world.
Did you guys catch that Air Force patch? Holy shit, I looked it up and found a couple other weird ones. Anyway, after I saw that segment, I insisted on researching more. I found early on that this symbol may also be referred to as a delta. Makes enough sense. Anyway, here's a few more space agencies from different parts of the world with the same symbolism. I put a link to another great video on the subject that covers more as well. What's interesting about the UK logo is that it appeared on Doctor Who 3 years prior to its establishment. Speaking of sci-fi shows, did NASA and the Air Force copy off of Star Trek, or did Star Trek copy off of them? I do know that someone that designed some of the Star Trek logos was also contracted to create some of the NASA logos. That doesn't make it any less weird. In fact, I think it makes it weirder. Russia and China too? Also, NASA goes out of their way to mimic Star Trek? They have a full timeline laid out on the show. The top 2 rows are the evolution of our space programs, and the bottom row is the evolution of the United Nations. It goes from the United Nations to the United Earth in 2150, and finally to the United Federation of Planets in 2161. You guys know the quote, "Life imitates art"? Well, it couldn't be more true, but I would replace the word art with the word programming, and it's freaky. For instance, Cyberdyne and their robotic HAL suit. You guys remember HAL, right? Moving on. Battlestar Galactica has vectors and chevrons for almost all their insignias. Looks like even the last one kinda has it mixed in there too. Stargate uses the symbol. I think it looks like a square and compass, like the top half of a square and compass. I'll give you some better examples. Let's go back to the Star Trek Starfleet command patch. The chevron looks just like the Newport logo, which everyone calls an upside-down Nike sign. I think Newport's is a chevron for sure. Nike could still be a Saturn ring or even a check mark. Side note, Nike was the winged goddess of victory. I found a transport company in Wales called Newport, and it has the 2 vectors connected to look like an N. Here's a pack of cigarettes that I suspected of having a craft of some sort. You know, kinda like one of these, for lack of better pictures. And I think I'm 100% right. I found some special packs with the symbol flying around the world, and another with the symbol in the atmosphere while a pilot looks. Reminds me of the stories where pilots swear they were followed by UFOs. And real quick, here's another pack that I thought was funky with its Nike looking checkmark forming an X. I was looking at it all wrong. I guessed that it was Saturn symbolism, but I didn't see that it was in fact Saturn. All you gotta do is turn it. Anyway, RJ Reynolds has something similar. The United States Enrichment Corporation has it, ×4. Now I see this craft everywhere I look, if it isn't Saturn. But this one, being that it's Chevron, confirms to me that these are chevrons and vectors that we're dealing with. Speaking of chemical, gas, and oil companies, check this out. Take the US Air Force insignia, add Chevron and Texaco, both owned by Chevron, and you start mixing their logos. It's a near perfect match. Weird, huh? Anyway, let's look at Lockheed's logo before they merged with Martin Marietta. Lockheed started in 1912. Now let's look at Martin Marietta's. If you search Chevron symbols, you'll get a bunch of patterns that are identical to this. The M's are chevrons made to look like M's. The two companies merged in 1995 and changed their logo to more vectors and chevrons. In 2006, Boeing and Lockheed Martin formed the United Launch Alliance. Here's a Russian space station patch. Here's a National Recon Office patch for Lockheed Martin. Here's another for the United Launch Alliance. NRO patches are very straightforward and disturbing. Here's a company very similar to Boeing and Lockheed. French automobile company. Pontiac has a star in the middle just like Star Trek. Virgin Galactic is a commercial spaceflight company that's been in testing for years now with no commercial flights yet. Some people think the V is a vector chevron, but Virgin Records was created in 1973 for music. And mainstream music has one purpose that I'm sure of: to get us addicted to sex to the point where we can't even think clearly. If you think this is silly, then you should rethink it while you watch virtually any music video on Vivo. What's up with Atari? They came out in 1972 along with so many space games it's hard to think that it's not programming. Something similar to their logo appears on many space program patches from around the world. Another reason I made this video is because I think that NASA and other space agencies are a sham. Let me play a couple short clips to give you an idea. I'll put a full video in the description.
Have a look at her hair. There's something odd about her hair. I know this is zero gravity and hair is supposed to stick out and go all over the place, but her hair doesn't really flop around naturally. It's always sticking out kind of rigidly. Maybe they permed it in that position, or perhaps they're hanging her upside down. As she shakes her head from side to side slightly, you can see the hair always springs back to a particular position with respect to her head. It should flop all over the place. The chain that she's wearing around her neck is a computer graphic. This is computer-generated images. About 6 months ago, in 2013, a gallon of water leaked into one of their spacesuits in a matter of seconds. NASA doesn't really have a proper explanation for how on earth this could have happened. There shouldn't be water leaking into someone's helmet and a person almost drowning in space. How can you drown in space? They now wear snorkels to make sure that they don't drown in space. How can this be happening? A snorkel in space? There could be some water in the porous plate sublimator. When they were on the moon, they supposedly had about a gallon of water, but that cooling system is supposed to be well away from their head. There really is no sane explanation for why a gallon of water would leak into someone's spacesuit, unless you realize the whole thing is faked inside a swimming pool. In this scene, you can see the Chinese spacewalk, and you can see a bubble coming up from the guy's suit. How do you have a bubble in space? Space is supposed to be a vacuum, not a swimming pool, but it's obviously just a swimming pool filled with water. Obviously, there would be some equipment that they could only fix from the outside, but a lot of these spacewalks, it seems like equipment they easily could have configured to be accessible from the inside of the International Space Station. It seems more like an excuse to get out and show their other space trick, which is the faking of spacewalks in a swimming pool. In this vid, you catch a glimpse of someone wearing a scuba tank. Scuba tanks in space? Snorkels and scuba tanks in space?
Alright, that's it for this video, guys. Thanks for tuning in to ODD TV. Please subscribe, like, and share. We'll see you next time. And people say it looks like a ring on Saturn, kind of symbolism, like a swoosh around Saturn. I think it kind of looks like a spaceship kind of thing, you know, like one of these. And it's funny, kind of the same logo, only it's sharper. And we got Hollywood cigarettes. See, this one looks just like that, like a little ship hovering, you know. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm looking way too far into this shit. I don't know, but it's still fun, keeps me occupied. Looks like a ship, and it looks like Chevron's logo. I received some feedback basically saying that my line of thinking isn't as crazy as what can actually be. He provided me with a link to a rare documentary called Moon Rising by Jose Escamilla, because RJ Reynolds has a boomerang looking thing in their logo. Let's look at the Newport logo again. And you see how there's emphasis on the older logo with the shadow underneath it? It looks like it's floating or hovering above it. And we got these Ace cigarettes that have... What's happening out there? This is ODD TV. We're gonna look at vectors and chevrons, but I'm gonna start this by sharing a clip from another video that I made called Cigarettes in the Occult. It's the reason why I'm making this video in the first place. And Newports, they have this weird shape for their logo. It looks like an upside down Nike sign.